Hello to everyone. Today, I will be discussing the topic Green Revolution. Without further ado, let's get started. Today, I will be discussing with you guys the introduction of what is Green Revolution, impacts of Green Revolution, and Green Revolution and its critics. So what comes to your mind when you heard Green Revolution? But first, let us all know what is Green Revolution. So the term Green Revolution is refers to a set of initiatives involving research, development, and technology transfer, development of high-yielding cereal grains, construction of irrigation, and distribution of seeds, synthetic fertilizers, and pesticides to farmers were all part of the projects. So the founder of Green Revolution is Norman Ernest Borlaug. So his integrated research developed a new agricultural system that met of the food demand of the increased population and saved many people from starvation. So in 1970, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his humanitarian work. So the former USAID Director William God coined the term Green Revolution in 1968 before it was known as Third Agricultural Revolution. So the term Green Revolution was invented by God to emphasize his idea that the introduction of new high-yield varieties of wheat and rice could help the developing world feed itself. Now let's move to Green Revolution in Mexico. So Mexico has been the historic site of the Green Revolution. Mexico undertook a deliberate effort to transform agricultural productivity, particularly with irrigated rather than dry land cultivation. So with the growth in the number of calories consumed per Mexican, increased production offered food self-sufficiency in Mexico to feed its rising and urbanizing population. Mexico benefits from the Green Revolution expertise and technology, thanks to the financial backing from the government and Mexican agronomists. So the technology was viewed as a great tool to feed the needy while also addressing some of their pressures associated with land distribution. So agriculture was a socio-political concern in Mexico, and it was a major role in the participation of some regions in the Mexican Revolution. Following the Mexican Revolution, the government transferred land to peasants in several areas of the country, thereby ending the hacienda system. The government promoted agricultural development that improved technological components of agriculture in areas where small-scale peasant cultivators were not dominant. Mexico served as a model for spreading the Green Revolution throughout Latin America and beyond, into Africa and Asia. Small-scale farmers typically couldn't afford the complete package of inputs, which included new seed strains, fertilizer, synthetic pesticides, and water. Pesticide application could be dangerous for farmers. Their use often harmed the local ecology, poisoning streams and putting employees and new birds' health at risk. Now, let's go to the Green Revolution in India. India was on the verge of mass starvation in 1961 when Norman Borlaug was invited to India by Dr. M. S. Swaminathan, the advisor to the Indian Minister of Agriculture. The Ford Foundation and the Indian government worked to import wheat seed from the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, despite bureaucratic obstacles imposed by Indian grains monopolies. India quickly accepted IR8, a semi-dwarf rice variety developed by the International Rice Research Institute, or IRRI, that when grown with appropriate nutrients and irrigation could produce more rice grains per plant. This time was part of Norman Ewerlog's bigger Green Revolution initiative, which used agricultural science and technology to boost agricultural output in developing countries. So IR8 was a huge hit in Asia, and it was labeled as miracle rice. Now that we're done on the first part of the topic, let's move to the advantages and disadvantages of Green Revolution. So let's all find out what are the advantages of Green Revolution. So since the commencement of the Green Revolution, the world's population has increased by nearly 4 billion people, and many feel that there would have been more starvation and malnutrition if the revolution had not occurred. So number one, because it allows farmers to generate larger harvests on less land, the Green Revolution has helped to preserve the environment. It means that even though a farmer have a less land, he or she could still harvest a larger amount of crops on it. So number two, it enables us to produce more food than traditional farming practices. So if we had continued to practice traditional farming in order to grow cropland and produce adequate food, it would have turned down millions of acres forest and killing habitat. Furthermore, we would have to use more pesticide in more fields, significantly harm the ecosystem. So our planet today produces around 20% more calories through crop production and livestock support. This is to meet the nutritional minimum of the current world population, but thanks to the process occurred as the result of the Green Revolution. So number three, it may be useful in the reduction of greenhouse gas emission. So in 2013, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States published a study on the Green Revolution's impact on greenhouse gas emissions. Without the gains in crop growth that occurred during this time, emission might have been up to 7.4 GT, more than what was recorded through 2004. Agriculture's high-yield strategy has a significant impact on how carbon moves through the atmosphere. The global economy benefits from a reduction in food prices. So agribusiness markets are driven by supply and demand. When yields grow more constant, supply becomes more plentiful. High-yield crops generate more harvested plant items, implying that more food is available to customers. This benefits lower prices for everyone, while farmers profit more since they can produce more with less land. Number 5, the last one, it accelerated the natural growth of plant resistance. So crops today have a better level of natural disease resistance than ever before thanks to the tactics provided by the Green Revolution. We've learned how to use genetic modification to generate certain strains that allows us to grow products in specific areas without having to use a lot of chemicals to ensure a consistent yield. Now we're done on the advantages. Let's go to the disadvantages of Green Revolution. The Green Revolution agricultural practices may have helped to alleviate hunger in poor nations, but they also resulted in a major loss of diversity, and wild biodiversity around the world. So, here's why. Number one, it resulted in a lack of biodiversity in farmland structures around the world. These disadvantages exist because the methods rely on a small number of high-yield crops for production standards, using only a few closely related species and limiting the types of crops historically linked with them, such as the more nutritious grain. It also implies that delectable and healthful types have been dropped. So number two, it degrades the quality of the soil that crops are grown in. What we do know is that growing the same crops over and over in the same area depletes soil nutrients. So farmers, particularly in developing countries, are forced to hunt for additional places to meet their production limits as a result of this outcome. Number three, it demands the utilization of non-sustainable farming methods. Almost all of the high-intensity agricultural production that occurs as a result of Green Revolution technology and concept uses non-renewable resources. To attain larger yields, people must use agricultural machinery to maintain their farms. Number 4. It has health consequences that we must consider when implementing its policies. So some operators may be more likely to get cancer if they eat pesticides or exposed to chemicals while working on it. So poor farming practices such as overusing products and failing to use must are responsible for the deaths due to direct exposure. So number 5, it promotes monocropping. So instead of cultivating multiple crops on the same land or rotating crops on the land, the Green Revolution encourages the agricultural practice of planting the same crop on the same ground in perpetuity. Pesticide seepage into surrounding soil, soil mineral depletion, and in some cases, deforestation, have been the problems caused by monocropping. For the last part of this topic, we will be discussing the Green Revolution and its critics. So the Green Revolution has been questioned in a variety of ways, mostly by the environmentalists and globalization critics. So these criticisms can be divided into three groups. The first one is that agricultural quality is degrading. Fewer crop types were cultivated as a result of the development of Green Revolution hybrids and associated practices. So many hybrid crops are said to be nutritionally inferior, and this could be result in malnutrition. So the second one, social impacts of the Green Revolution are a source of concern. So the result of these techniques was the encouragement of large-scale industrial agriculture at the expense of small farmers who are unable to compete with the high efficiency of Green Revolution crops. So the result is a massive displacement and increasing urbanization and poverty among these farmers, and also the loss of their lands to a large agricultural companies. The last one, there are widespread doubts regarding the Green Revolution's and agricultural practices' long-term stability. So chemical fertilizers, um, insecticides, and herbicides are some of the created from the fossil fuels. It is largely used in Green Revolution practices, making agriculture increasingly reliant on petroleum goods. So this has sparked fears that a large drop in global oil and gas production, as well as commensurate price hikes, may be result that putting the billion of people in poverty and starvation. Most of these criticisms had a basis in reality, and some are resulted from inaccurate assessment of what was really happening in regions where the Green Revolution takes place. To sum off this topic, Green Revolution had greatly contributed in the welfare of many people, most likely during starvation and to one's economic development. Before I end this slide, I would like to ask a question to everyone. Here it goes. What would the world have been like if technological advancements had not taken place? Now that I'm done discussing my topic about Green Revolution, let me introduce myself. Hello everyone, I am Mabilog from Negros Oriental State University, BA Communication, third year student. I hope you guys learned something from my discussion today. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.